Hi and welcome back to the channel. My name is lynndjung. I am a speculative fiction writer, and today's video it feels really self-indulgent, but I promise we'll get to a point. The concept of today's video is that I have had a really interesting year in terms of writing. I feel like I've hit so many milestones. I've done a lot of really really things and pushed myself and challenged myself. And I would say so far in my life, basically 2023 has been the year that I have grown the most as a writer. So I want to take a look back at everything I've written, everything I've published, and everything I've learned. While the first two are definitely a little bit self-congratulatory, and I am a little bit embarrassed about that, I hope that it is a good review and recap, and that talking about the journey I've been through this year with my writing inspires you or helps you in some way. And also I just really kind of enjoy these reflections on my writing, and it's been a good year. So let's talk about this year. I'm pretty much going to split this discussion up into three parts. We're going to talk about the short fiction I've worked on, the long form fiction I've worked on, so the books I've been working on, and then we're going to get into the review and reflection, and that's going to be a little bit more loose and stream of consciousness, so bear with me. I do have a couple of plugs to put in before we get started. One is that I am officially doing a podcast. It's a cozy writing podcast designed to serve as a virtual writing retreat, and you can find it right here on the channel, and I'm also working on getting that up on Spotify and Apple Music and stuff like that. It's basically an hour, so a long form podcast that's just chatting about writing things. I just want it to feel cozy and not too serious, and something you can put on in the background, because a lot of my writing videos tend to be a lot more educational or vlogs. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please go ahead and check that out. It is right here on this channel. The other thing I want to plug is that I do have a short story coming out this month. It is with the Icarus Writing Collective. I will put a link to their website below. My piece is called Eulogy for a Muse. It's a flash fiction piece about the intersection between art and grief. I'll talk about it a little bit more in this video, but it's my second ever publication, so my sophomore publication. And if you wanted to check that out, that should be available soon. Okay, let's get into it and talk about everything I've written this year, which is kind of a lot. So for short fiction, 2023 was the year that I started to take short fiction seriously. I made a Chill Subs account, which by the way is the best organizational tool. I mean, I haven't tried other ones, but I just enjoy it so much. It really does make submitting short fiction feel a lot more chill and relaxed. When I started writing short fiction, my first piece, which I released last year on my blog for free, Wisteria, I didn't expect much. I thought okay, I'm not that good at this, and I'll just keep trying because it was a good exercise, and I did like being able to complete a story and write it from beginning to end and revise it in a relatively short period of time. But I kind of wasn't expecting to start submitting to magazines so soon, and I wasn't expecting to succeed at that so soon. So what happened is I started out the year by writing and submitting two pieces at basically the same time. One was called What We Leave in the Desert. It was a sort of spooky, I'm not going to say outright horror. It was a story about a straight couple on a road trip in the desert, in the Mojave specifically, and they're having an argument and they break up right as they pull up to this kind of off gas station, and some stuff happens. So it was very much informed by some feelings I was feeling at the time, and it was definitely a lot more unpolished than I would have liked looking back, so I might polish that up in the future. I don't know if I'm ready to deal with that period of my life again at this point, if that makes sense, because it was such a piece that came from what I was feeling at the moment. But yeah, I submitted that to one place. It didn't get accepted. I kind of feel like I submitted it to the wrong type of magazine. And then at the same time, I wrote Esther Park, or The Fall of Esther Park is the full title, in about a day. And this one is another piece that I submitted to one magazine, and it got accepted by that magazine. And to sum it up, if you don't already know, and sorry if you do already know, because this is probably the millionth time that I've talked about this story, it's basically a mythological origin story told through the lens of Korean church community gossip. It's queer, it's odd, it's just a very strange story. I submitted it to Apparition Lit, and they understood my vision right away, and they accepted it. And I feel like that was such a good first experience for me, because the editing process was really straightforward. People were communicative. I knew what was expected of me, and it was just very professional and enjoyable, so I had a good time doing that. And Apparition has continued to be very good to me, because they ended up submitting my piece, Esther Park, for the Pushcart Prize, and so Esther Park has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. I never expected that from that piece because I literally did write it in like a day. And of course I edited it after, but it didn't really change that much from its first inception to its final form. So I'm really proud of that. I did feel for a while that it was lightning in a bottle and I would like never write something of that caliber again and I would never sell another piece. Obviously, I don't think that anymore. But yeah, Esther Park was a great first publication experience and I'm so glad that was my short fiction debut. I think it's really representative of the stuff I want to write and the stuff that speaks to me. The third short story that I wrote this year was Eulogy for a Muse, which was a flash fiction piece. I submitted this actually to 2 different magazines, both rejected it pretty quickly, and then I submitted it to the Icarus Writing Collective, which is a fairly new magazine. They're only on their 2nd issue, and they ended up accepting it. This one is, as I mentioned, a short piece about the intersection between art and grief. It's not quite a narrative, it's more of like a collection of thoughts and feelings, but it does loosely follow the story of a muse who gets ejected from Parnassus, so there's a lot of feelings about art in there. There are some other complete short stories floating around in the ether right now on submission to various magazines and publications. I haven't heard word back, so I'm not going to talk about them, but I think there are about 3, and then there's another one that I'm just waiting for a very specific magazine to open up so I can submit it to them, and that would be 4. Yeah, that sounds about right. So it's a mix of like flash fiction and longer short stories. So I think that brings the total up to 7 pieces that I've written and submitted this year, or finished and submitted this year, or 6 that I've finished, or 7, sorry, oh my god. 7 short pieces that I've finished this year and 6 that I have submitted, with 1 that's just waiting for the right magazine to open up. That is kind of an amazing year. I also started and did not complete a bunch of other short pieces that I'm just like sort of waiting for the mood to strike me for those. I've just been so enthusiastic about short fiction pretty much this whole year. I've just been churning out short stories consistently and submitting them, and I feel like it has been so satisfying to see the full life cycle of a piece. And I'll say it again and again, nothing has like helped me refill my creative well more and refill my motivation and my faith in myself more than not even getting a story accepted to a publication, but just finishing these pieces and seeing a story in its complete final form and seeing how my brain works and how I'm able to put that on the page. It just makes me feel like I'm able to do it for longer form works. I cannot recommend writing short fiction enough. I feel like it helps you develop as a writer so much, especially when it comes to like editing your own work. And if you feel so inclined as to submit to publications, there's a lot more gratification. Like, you don't have to jump through as many hoops as you would for a novel. You don't have to get an agent. You don't have to wait around for like a year or more. I think I do carry a lot of stress from my time being agented and waiting around on submission for actual multiple years for multiple projects, and it just like took a lot of my faith in myself out of me, you know. And I don't blame anyone for that. I don't blame myself. I don't blame the people I worked with. It's just like one of those things where it was so grueling and it just chipped away at my self-confidence so much that it's been really nice to be able to like recover from that a little bit and have faith in myself again, and short fiction has been that outlet for me, and I'm really grateful to have found it this year. So for novels, I kind of jumped around, but my main project has still been mods. Sadly, I have not hit my goal of actually finishing the first draft, but I will say, without jinxing it, that I have hit a really good point in the story. I've been writing like multiple thousands of words almost every day for the past couple weeks. I have redone the parts of the outline that were really bothering me, and I feel like I've cut away a lot of the fat in the outline, and I'm one of those writers where if I feel like there's something wrong with something I previously wrote. Basically what was happening was that my act 2 was very, very shaky, and there was a lot of unnecessary stuff in there that was not moving the plot forward, and it felt very stuck, and that was making me feel stuck even as I'd moved past those scenes. Like, even though those scenes were already written and done with, I felt stuck in act 3 because the previous act was just kind of a miasma. It was a swamp. I finally like stopped trying to push myself through the act 3. I went back and I sort of cleared everything up. I fixed up my act 2. I redid my outline with that new act 2 as the basis. Now the way forward is just so much clearer because I've already written many iterations of this book, including like the latter half of it. A lot of this stage has actually just been like going through various drafts, like digging through them and finding the exact passages that I need and like copy pasting and editing slightly. It's been like very quick work so far. Of course, I'm going to eventually hit a point where I haven't written anything for it and it's going to be annoying, but it's really just like filling in the blanks at this point. So I'm very, very hopeful that I'll be able to see good progress by the end of the year. I do have a very busy tail end of this month and a very busy January, but February should be a bit more chill, and then I'll be going home in March. Once again, I will have a gap of a couple months to work, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, knock on wood, I'm very much hoping that I'll be able to use that gap to polish up the book and then start to query it. What I'm saying is that I'd really like to be done by March. I don't 100% know if that's going to happen, especially given how much stuff I have going on over the next couple months, but I am very, very hopeful. I'm actually going to start doing regular writing vlogs again because I do want to capture like the end of that first draft on video. And I do think that like non-challenge writing vlogs kind of help motivate me to like stay on top of my writing and be consistent. So I'm going to start doing regular writing vlogs, or at least I'll do a trial one and we'll kind of see. I also think that because I sort of gave up on making travel TikToks, they were like too annoying to make. It would be fun to sort of capture some of the stuff that I do in Thailand in writing vlogs. So they'll kind of be like combination travel writing vlogs. I won't do too much of the travel stuff, but it would be fun to just like write in cafes in random parts of the country and show you guys a little bit of what life is like here. The other novel that I worked on seriously this year was the project that I worked on during NaNoWriMo, which is my food truck romance novel. That one is weird. I think I have to circle back to that one. I got pretty far, like I got to act 2. The words were coming very easily, but then I realized that I hated everything I was writing, and I don't think I found quite the right voice for it yet. I really have to find a way to balance my normal, more like literary leaning voice with a more typical romance voice, which like not in a derogatory way at all, tends to read a lot simpler. Like most romance novels don't have a very literary leaning voice, especially the contemporary ones. So I want to find a way to balance that. I think the thing that I really enjoy about like contemporary novels is how voicey they are, and so I have to like sacrifice a little bit of the literary for a bit more voicey. Yeah, it's just something that I'm not ready for, and it's definitely not something I can work on while I'm also working on Moths, which is very definitively literary leaning in terms of its voice. That in itself has been hard for me to sink into. So I'm just shelving the food truck for now. Another project that I worked on and off, kind of just like when I got bored, was, this is so weird, I think the best way to describe it is Fairy Tale of Dieselpunk. So it's sort of like interwar period, so between World War I and World War II America, but it's kind of like the Mummy movie from the 90s. It's very much like pulp adventure fiction meets like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just weird. It's a romance, it's historical fantasy, and it's fun, but it's also very odd, and I haven't quite figured out an identity for it yet. I just have the plot and like a lot of the world elements, so I'd like to figure out an identity for it before I talk about it anymore. All right. So those have been my projects for this year. Something interesting I've noticed is that I have a lot less novel ideas coming to me. The ideas that have been hitting my brain lately have been short fiction ideas, so that is probably why I've been a lot more prolific with my short fiction than my full length or my long form works this year. I really wish that I could sit here and tell you guys that I finished a novel this year, but I obviously didn't, and you would know if I had, so we're not gonna pretend, but I'm gonna say that I'm feeling like I'm finally starting to hit the end. And I've said this before, it might be controversial, but I don't think I will revise Moths that heavily before sending it out, and I don't think I'll have that many people read it before sending it out. It's been through so much already. Like, it has been through so many versions, and I have thought through so many different parts of it, and I kind of think that like hearing too many conflicting opinions is going to throw me off. So I'll do it like a very vigorous self-edit, but like one self-edit. And then I'll have like a couple people I trust who understand the vision and understand what I'm going for, read it, and then I'll do maybe another edit based off of their work. Then hopefully I can query it. We'll see. But now that we've covered all that, let's talk a little bit about the lessons I've learned this year. I think one thing that I really want to acknowledge without getting too into it, although I feel like I need to be a little bit less like about my personal life on here. When my personal life, like when my life outside of writing, outside of YouTube is going well, YouTube and writing become secondary. When things are not going so well, that's when I tend to divert a lot of energy into those projects. You might notice that I've been making more videos lately and releasing them more regularly, and that's because the transition to moving to Thailand has been difficult for me, and this has been a really good outlet, but it's also a reason that I've been writing more. I do have a lot more downtime than I expected as well, so instead of just like watching television every day, I try to be a little bit more productive and make videos and write. But when my work-life balance is a little bit healthier, I just sort of tend to put writing to the wayside. And I think that is good to know for the future. I think it's difficult to place the same expectations on myself in terms of writing productivity when I'm at home and like with the people I love and able to spend time with them. Like I shouldn't expect myself to be as madly productive as I am when I just don't have as much going on. My biggest period of not writing was when I had my really fun field job that just was amazing. Every day that I came out of the field, I was too exhausted to even look at my computer, and then on the days that I wasn't in the field and not on the job, I would hang out with like my partner and my friends. And having that time constraint made me prioritize different things. So I think understanding that like writing isn't always going to be a priority in my life, as bad as that might sound, has been good for me. And I think that's okay. I definitely had periods in my life, and I probably will have more periods in my life, where writing was almost like a necessity. Like it was like breathing. And now it's just, if I can write 500 words in a day, that's a pretty good day. Things have just sort of changed for me in terms of my life and my priorities. And while I am grateful that I've been more productive while I'm in Thailand, it is kind of because my life is not in so good a place right now, and I'm still just adjusting. The other thing I learned is that there's just some things in this world, some stories that I was not meant to tell. I am talking about the rom-com here. I hope I'm able to tell it in the future, because that is a project that is very much informed by how I feel about love, how I view love, and contextualizing that, putting that into words. And I want to write a love story like that. But the commercial side of the romance genre is something that I am just not familiar with at this moment. I feel like I need to study. I feel like I need to read a bunch of romance novels, because that is a hard voice to grasp. And I am not an avid romance reader by any means, especially not contemporary romance. You guys know me, I don't read contemporary stuff. So I either need to adapt that project into literary fiction somehow, or figure out how to write a more commercial novel. I think I've always had this yearning to be able to write something very commercial, something that will make me like $1 billion, if that is even a possibility. This year, I feel like I very firmly established myself with my short fiction and with my novels as a very firm, literary leaning writer of genre fiction that might be too niche for a lot of people. That's just who I am. That might change over time, but that is currently who I am and the type of stuff that I gravitate toward as a reader and as a writer. But I think I could work toward writing something very commercial. It just wouldn't feel right. If I did put out this romance novel, I might put it out under a pseudonym. It just is like not my brand at all. It's just so not me. But I do think it's a story that I really want to tell, and it's one that I really enjoy, so I just have to figure that out. Something else that I learned this year was that, or I guess this might be more of a realization, I want to work on more forms of writing that play with different media. Hold on, let me say that again. I want to write things for different types of media. This is mostly visual media, which will be a struggle for me because I cannot visualize things at all. Like I do not see images in my head. I've written a couple scripts for like stage plays, and not even plays, but like basically skits in high school and college. And the visualization just made those scripts terrible. But I think I'd like to work on that a little bit more, not scripts necessarily, just other forms of media, and figure out how to make my weird brain that doesn't see things work for those types of media. I just feel like there's so many other types of storytelling that I really want to get into and that I really enjoy consuming as a media consumption person, like as a film goer, as someone who watches plays and musicals and whatever, especially comic books. I would say that's one of my big passions. I grew up reading a lot of comic books. I would really like to work on one day. So just branching out a little bit and starting to explore different avenues for storytelling, I think could be really fun. In general, I think this year I can very firmly say that I've established my identity as a writer. I found my voice, and I've worked on some projects that I really enjoy and I'm really proud of. And my writing is finally out in the world for like the first time, which is very weird to think about. I lied a little bit. There's a secret fourth section that I forgot about because I didn't look at my notes thoroughly enough because I had to take my glasses off. So the fourth section is actually my goals for 2024, which my main goal, which I've already brushed on, is to finish mods query mods. I just want this finished. Like, I want this book to be done. I think I've been working on it since like 2020 in some capacity, and I'm exhausted. Like, I am so tired. I want to be done. I think the next project will be so much easier to work on, whatever that may be. I haven't quite decided yet, because this one was just so stressful in so many ways, and it was new in a lot of ways for me. First project that required like hard world building. Like, there is a hard magic system in this book now, and it was very annoying to come up with. My other goal is to write a ton more short fiction. I think my soft goal will be like finish 10 pieces and try to submit all of them, but I don't really care as much about that. I would rather just have like 10 complete pieces by the end of next year. I have a lot of ideas swirling around. I have a lot of things that I want to explore, a lot of different like funky ideas for format and all these things. Oddly enough, most of my short fiction ideas tend to be either straight up horror or very horror leaning. I'm kind of excited / scared to put out more like actual proper horror stories. Recently, I've been watching The Fall of the House of Usher, and that has like sparked so much in me. I just watched the first episode, but it is so well done. But I think that like bringing that classic horror vibe, like that classic literary horror vibe into a modern setting, that's something I really want to explore as well. I would love to write ghost stories, modern ghost stories. I'm actually like real life terrified of ghosts, so it might be a lot for me. I'll be brave and I'll try to write some. As for my next long form project, my next novel after mods, I really haven't decided. One book that I hadn't mentioned, that I didn't mention just because I only worked on a little bit of it, but I got that little bit very polished because I was submitting it to stuff. I had this like literary fabulous novel that I was working on, and all I'm going to say about it now is that it's multi-generational. It's set in far northern California, and there's a little bit of like a spooky element to it. This project was a little odd because it wasn't based off of any established idea that I had sitting on. Usually when I'm trying to like start a new project, I pick from my existing pool of ideas, but it was a concept that I developed very quickly to try to like get this excerpt out, and then I got really attached to it, and I really want to see where that story goes. The thing about that is that it is not outlined at all. I just wrote the first like couple chapters, like 20-25 pages. So all the setup basically. So this could be a novel that I just pants from beginning to end. And I think that'd be kind of fun. I don't know what I would do with it, but I think it would be a good way to release some stress while I'm querying. This is just one of those projects where I feel oddly drawn to it in a way I can't explain. I just kind of want to revisit it as soon as I'm done with mods. Other than that, yeah, the historical, fantasy, romance, there's a lot of projects. I think I'd also mentioned before, there's this sort of like, why can't I remember the word? It was climate fiction, it was biopunk / ocean punk, it was a little bit of Waterworld, but make it more punk. That was a cool idea. I'd really like to develop that world a little bit more before I actually go into it, and that's one that would require an outline because there's a lot going on. I don't know. I think one thing I will say is that I'm very much itching to write a romance with a happy ending and a lot of drama. I want to write like a melodramatic romance in this genre fiction setting. So I'm kind of like digging around for a project that will fulfill that for me. The rom-com unfortunately wasn't it. It wasn't enough melodrama and it wasn't genre fiction enough. I need to find something that'll do that for me. But those are generally speaking my writing goals for 2024. More horror short fiction, more short fiction in general, finish mods, obviously query it if I can, and work on something else while it's being queried. I really am curious to see how this next year will go. I feel like this year was a lot of like new beginnings, new setup for bigger and better things, and leaving my agent was a big part of that. It was really stressful for me and it was a really tough decision. And again, to reiterate, it was not like personal at all. It just really boiled down to the fact that I don't really see myself writing young adult anymore. There's a couple of young adult projects that I have written previously that I might revisit, but I don't really have any more young adult ideas in me. I just want to write like adult stuff forever. My agent just didn't have experience with that, so I wanted to like move on. Making that decision was a big turning point for me. And yeah, this felt like a really big setup year, and a year that will hopefully lead to even better stuff in 2024. I will keep you guys updated, of course. Thank you so much for watching this long-winded, very self-indulgent video. I'll talk to you guys next time and see you next week for the next podcast episode. Bye.